Hello, welcome to the Modern Romantic Podcast, where we celebrate and inspire romanticism through passionate people who do incredible things. Hi, I'm keeping a picture of you in my mind forever. Hi, I'm Trey. And
Oh,
I'm by somebody who I am always going to keep a picture of forever in my mind, my co host, Emily. Hi, Emily.
hello. It's good to hear that I've burned an image in your mind at all.
I don't have a witty retort to that, but it is. Uh, no, we have known each other for quite a while, so it's a friendship that I don't want to get rid of.
Yeah, same. For sure.
Yay. How's your week been?
Good. I got some cool news this morning.
Ooh.
Yeah, I entered at the very last second a photography contest.
Mhm.
It is with the Writing Fae, which is a literary publication, and they were looking for photography for their cover for their June edition. And I thought, oh, well, it's kind of a spring theme. They wanted kind of something with fairy. And the deadline was literally within like an hour and a half of when I saw the post. And so I went, oh, let me get on this. And so my first thought was the tea party photo shoot that we did for Modern Romantic a few years ago. And I thought, well, those images really didn't get much traction anywhere. And I thought, well, let me share them. Maybe they'll like them. And like they accepted it. So they haven't announced it yet. So this is kind of, I should let them announce it. That should be their big news. But I'm gonna, not me, I won't be on the cover, but my work will be on the cover of the Writing
Good.
Fae. Yes, it's very exciting.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And I won $200.
Ooh.
Yay. It's something. Yay.
No, that's so
So,
exciting.
thank you.
Do you know when the issue comes out?
June.
June.
It's the
Okay.
June edition. So I'm not sure when that releases exactly. And within the next few days, they'll announce it on their social media and stuff. So
That's so exciting.
yeah. How was your week?
Really good. I do have to keep some of the details about what the story I'm about to share kind of
Okay.
private, just for reasons that I'll explain. So a married couple, a local married couple, the the wife in this duo has always wanted to perform a particular role in a show, but it's a not
Okay.
often performed show. Unbeknownst to her, for her birthday, her husband orchestrated a performance of said show and cast the entire show around her so that she could perform this role. Now, they didn't license the show, so they can't like publicize it to keep everything like a private performance and to keep all the contractual obligations, etc. So they don't have to pay the licensing fees for it. But I got to see a show that I've wanted to see for a while performed in a venue that is very surprising for this to be performed in. And I have to say, it was some of the best storytelling that I have seen. There are things that professional theaters could learn from this performance, and it was
Wow.
stunning. So, really, really, really solid work.
So did she have time to prep for it? Or was it like, happy birthday, guess what? Go. And action.
They spent 6 weeks over 18
Okay.
rehearsals, which is, like,
Oh,
super short, getting
okay.
this whole show together, costumes, harmonies, the dialogue, everything.
That's
Just
amazing.
and I got to see it on her birthday. So at
Oh,
the very end of the show, they said, "Ladies and gentlemen, just as one final thank you, will you please join me in singing happy birthday to my wife?" And all turn to her and sing.
what a story. What a cool gift.
It's so good.
That's
I just
amazing.
wish I could tell you more details, but I can't because I don't wanna cause them to have to pay
I
more
understand.
money.
Well, that is, I think that fits well into our modern romantic theme.
It
This
does.
is such a good gift.
It
My
was
goodness.
it was so good. But, I am truly interested in the stories that our guest has today. So would you do
Yeah.
us the honor and tell us about our guest?
Sure. Tonight on the show, we have Steven Seidenberg, an artist, writer, and photographer whose work explores perception, memory, silence, and the often overlooked. His work feels beautifully aligned with our love of wonder and the strange poetry of the everyday. Welcome to the show, Steven.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
So I'm curious because every artist's journey into their particular field is always different. So for you, I noticed that some of your photography came a little bit later than some of your writing, but I'm curious which came first, photography or writing?
The chicken or the egg?
You know, I've been doing both for a long time, and long before I started publishing or started showing and exhibiting my work as a photographer as well. But I was uh, also, I mean, part of my practice and certainly part of my life as a writer and part of my way of thinking about photography has to do with my life as a philosopher. And I went to graduate school for philosophy and taught philosophy for a bit and was focused on that career for a little while before I I returned to a, a more uh, dedicated practice or undistracted practice of my uh, artistic endeavors, as it were, as a photographer and as a writer. Still using a lot of the materials and thinking through a lot of the problems and questions that I had as a philosopher and that I have as a philosopher, but with a different notion about how that work could seek an audience or seek interlocutors, if you will. So, in that sense, my both all of these practices began for me when I was quite young. In fact, when I was a teenager, really. But after, and I did them all through my undergraduate years. But then, in making a kind of a set of choices about what I thought would, I don't know, be the most fulfilling career path for me at a particular moment. Really, I should say, um, where I thought I could go to graduate school and not have to pay for it. So you don't have to pay for a PhD for the most part, even back then. So it was a way to avoid having to find other kinds of employment as I finished my undergraduate life.
How, for me, like the sense of philosophy and art kind of exist in separate spaces. So for you, how do you kind of reconcile between the philosophical part of your brain and the artistic side? Or is there overlap?
They're the same for me. I mean, they function in the same space and live in the same space, and do for much of the philosophical tradition. Actually, it's a kind of failing, I think, in the way in which many scholars and thinkers in the Anglophone world pursue and generally consider the literature of the Western philosophical tradition. That they think that it was not a practice, for instance, that was a literary practice. So not a practice without experimentation, literary experimentation, when in fact it basically in its first few hundred years uh, consists almost entirely of writers trying to invent a novel form with each new attempt at a new system or a new way of looking at the world in ways that overlap very much with my sense of the poetic and of, say, broadly speaking, what constitutes poetic discourse as opposed to narrative discourse or other kinds of discourse.
Fascinating.
I'm not sure if that answers your question entirely, but and in fact, perhaps I should ask you uh, where does your sense of philosophy come from?
I was not prepared for the tables to turn on me like this.
Well, and you
But
don't have to answer too. I don't mean to put you on the spot. Yeah.
no, I love it. I'm going to be honest and say that I think my idea of philosophy has truly come about in the past couple of years. Um, for a large part of it, I don't honestly think that I actively made decisions for myself.
Mhm.
So, in terms of like, there's this sense that I had of like waking up at some point and wanting to have a much more active part of my life. So, being honest, I think it's still fundamentally in its infancy stage.
Okay.
So sources or like a true like deep rooted in XYZ concept, to be determined. So,
Yeah.
what a lengthy way of telling you TBD.
Yeah. Well, that's an exciting moment, though, in any development of any interest, I think, where it's you don't know exactly where it's going, and even where it's coming from, perhaps. That's, I think, in the right approach on many levels, and I think people often enter whatever we're talking about, philosophy or literature or other things, or even art practice, photography or painting or what have you, through formal structures that art can be fantastic, of course, but I think often don't have room for the play of indeterminacy that you're describing. And I think that's quite important as a pedagogical tool in developing as an artist or as a thinker of any deep kind.
Oh, very well said. Um,
That's I know Trey was not ready for that question. I love it.
Yeah.
I would say for my sense of philosophy, I mean, I definitely have a pursuit of wonder.
Mhm.
I feel like my wonder is kind of like a way of paying attention. Uh, um, I tend to find that there are little worlds within our world, and I go find them.
Hmm.
So whether it's and I do that through photography. So mostly there are other ways, but it might be because I'm looking at the feet of a dragonfly through a macro lens,
Mm.
something like that. So um, I don't know, kind of just a way of seeing it's already there. But
Sure. I mean, and of course, Aristotle famously says that philosophy begins with wonder. That is
mhm.
his claim. On some level, I think I always like to joke that philosophy begins with boredom, but they're the same thing on some level. Boredom and wonder. They abut one another. They're very close to one another. And I think one of the as a as a pedagogue at some points in my life, I like to say that the place where one finds oneself bored is often the place that we need to actually think about what's going on and spend a little more time focusing in and sitting in boredom, allowing that to overtake us and seeing what happens and seeing what comes from that thing that we are dismissing as not as problematic or offensive or whatever, but as boring in particular.
Mhm. Do you find that's one thing that I've always struggled with is I don't feel bored often.
Yeah.
And so sitting there and being quiet in a way to take those moments to pay attention or to let my imagination do some work is something that I have to do more intentionally.
Hmm.
Do you find that to be true for you too, or do you approach it differently?
I think I've trained myself into it in a fairly rigorous way. I mean, my practice as a photographer certainly, and perhaps we share this on some level, is a kind of focusing practice. It
Mhm.
it it is similar to, I'm also, though not in a public way, a musician, say. It's
Mhm.
similar, photographing is similar to playing music or writing music or even
Mhm.
listening to music on some level. Um, and when I'm writing, it can be the same. It depends on how active the moment of composition is, whether it's, say, a time of really fastidious editing or not, which is a large part of my writing practice for sure. It's also a large part of my photography practice, I would say. So
Sure.
I'm not sure what your photography, how your photography, how you pursue it, and congratulations on your cover, your magazine cover. Uh,
Thank you.
that's great, and it's. I don't know if you show your work or have started to show your work, or if this is kind of a first step in doing that for you.
I have 2 galleries right
Okay,
now showing.
great.
No, I take that back. One has ended. I'm in one right now.
Okay.
So but I don't know if that's, I feel still like a beginner. Starter. That was great. A beginner. I still feel
Sure.
like I am just starting, for sure.
You're like a sourdough
Right.
starter.
I'm just a starter. I'm just gearing up. I'm just starting to froth. So it's the yeah, so it's the magazine cover is not new to me. Well, maybe the cover is. Have I been on a cover? I don't. I have been published many times. So and that's not to brag, it's just a fact. And I actually don't know that I've had a cover before. I would have it framed somewhere, I think. So I think I have not had a cover. So this might be my first cover. And that
Right.
is exciting. And the fact that these are not people that I already knew, which is also kind of a nice thing. It wasn't like because I knew somebody.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. That's good.
Thank you.
Yeah. And I understand what you're saying. And I don't know. So you've had this practice for a while, I assume. It seems like you've been doing this for a while.
Photography, yes, since I could hold it. Well, I got my first camera in high school. So
Oh, yeah, there you go. Me too. I mean, which was I think considerably before you were in high school. So actually, I got
maybe we could debate about that, but we won't do it.
No, we don't have to talk about it now. But when I was in elementary school, I got my first camera, which was like a Brownie. It was a box camera. And,
Okay.
And so it was a fun toy, and I had an uncle with a dark room, so
Fascinating. Okay.
it worked out in that way. But for me, the photographic practice is a conceptual practice in many ways. So I'm really only interested in making work, and this is not. I like work that isn't like this, but in terms of my own practice, I only make work in series and only in large series that allows for some kind of repetition of form that
Fascinating.
is
Okay.
discernible from one image to the next, which has a similar character to the way in which I use repetition in my writing and the way in which I think about conceptual art in a broad sense.
So are you ever like on a walk somewhere and go, I wish I had my camera with me to photograph this moment that I'm seeing? Or are you always just, because you said the word only,
Yeah.
or are you always like, if it's not a bent pipe on the exterior of a building, I don't want to think about a camera.
Yeah, if it's not, it doesn't have to be a bent pipe, but it has to be part of the series. I'm not like, that's cool, I think I'll take a picture of it.
Okay.
Never. I don't use my cell phone ever to photograph anything. I don't care about it. It's totally my practice of photography is completely doesn't exist outside of the ways in which I am able to construct this broad conceptual mechanism that drives it. And in those times, I can focus entirely on that. And I'll do that for, if I'm in a place where something like that's happening, it could be months, could be weeks where that's all I do. But I'm essentially uninterested in taking other kinds of photographs.
Okay.
Yeah.
That is a level of diligence that, frankly, I don't see very often.
It does feel like self-control. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting. I mean, for me, it isn't a control mechanism because I really just don't have the interest.
Okay.
So I don't have to convince myself, oh, I don't want to do that. I think, what would I do with that? How would that help? How would that express something
just
I want to
passes.
express?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, it's
Sure.
I mean, I still am. I'm constant, of course, as a photographer, and you know this very well. You frame all the time. Your vision is a form of framing. You're thinking about it. You think about light. You think about how it works, and that's true as a painter or as in other kinds of visual work or fine art practice. But there's a question about how one finds in any art practice how one finds voice, and voice, of course, happens through repetition. Like redundancy is the mechanism of style, so to speak.
Right.
So I really am interested in the ways that and photography is a medium that does certain kinds of things, and that I am exploring and hoping that the photographs I make are causing viewers who are seeing them to question what that is, what the photograph is, what it's doing in the world exactly, how it differs from other kinds of art practices, and what its implications are. So, and there's of course a philosophical literature around that as well, which is quite interesting to me. But yeah.
I mean, within your work, the impression that I get and from how you've described it is finding things hidden in plain sight. So, based on what you just told us about not pursuing photography in other formats and just keeping that, I'm curious, what is your take on why do you think people, or what do you think prevents people from seeing what's already in front of them?
We all there is, of course, we the limitations of what we see or what we perceive, the limitations of perception, as it were, uh, are are overdetermined. We there are many causes for those things. Some of them are cultural, some of them are ideological, right? Some of them have to do with the ways in which we are inculcated into a particular sense of the aesthetic, or a sense um, of the sublime. All of those things have, I think, ideological and really ideological and cultural precursors in our lives, and consequences for us. So part of I think the pleasure of imaging what is imaging what is unseen but at ready access, for instance. Um, of course, people see those things; they just see them in a different way. So the photographer, or I, recognize how it's not necessarily that people. For instance, I have a series that is uh, uh, focused on, as an example of this, the adhesive tape on the floors of the Tokyo subway system, where there's a lot of adhesive tape. Okay, because they use it for directional purposes and signage and other way in indicating areas of danger or construction, and it's robust material, so it stays there after its purpose is gone. It's not taken up, and it deteriorates, it decays in relationship to its environment and the ways in which people are interacting with it, stepping on it, and it's quite filthy and all of those things, as you would imagine. But um, so people see it all the time. They see it constantly, but they don't see it in the way that I'm seeing it. So they don't see it as compositionally compelling. And so the first time I went to Japan, I noticed this tape, this phenomenon, and I thought, well, I can come back and these can be kinds of um, uh, painterly compositions, abstract compositions in color and form. And I can use them to do what I find so interesting and compelling in some other visual contexts. In a sense, really emphasizing the way in which the camera also takes what's three-dimensional and flattens it into a flat field of view, a flat plane, photographing what is, for all intents and purposes, a flat plane in the visual field as well, but delimiting it in particular ways that uh, cause it to have the character of a compositional character that is aesthetically compelling, I hope. It's sometimes humorous, sometimes uncanny. And so when people see that work, when I've shown it in Japan, which I've done a few times, um, people say, "What? I don't really understand what that is." And I say, "Well, it's the tape in the subway station and right down the street." And it's not that they haven't noticed that there's tape; they just haven't seen it in that way. I have a project coming out as a photo book in the fall, also in Japan, called Kanazawa vacancy, and it is of uh, essentially vacant lots in the city of Kanazawa, which is on the inland sea, and a very really culturally important city in Japan, the second largest city after Kyoto, never to burn or be bombed or be destroyed, essentially. So it has a lot of wooden structures, and areas of preservation, cultural preservation and cultural heritage. But of course, outside of those areas of strict preservation, the houses fall into some decay, and because of demographic shifts in Japan, with an aging population and a young population that's drawn to Tokyo or Osaka, say, for work, um, there aren't enough people to occupy these houses in Kyoto, and they fall into disrepair. I mean, not in Kyoto, in Kanazawa. There aren't the craftsmen any longer to repair them. Really, it's expensive if they can find someone to do the repairs. So they decay, or they're taken down, and then these vacant lots have an odd history within that city. So they're made into parking lots where there's no reason to park. They're covered over in gravel, or they're allowed to return to the natural world, the flora and fauna of the region are allowed to reoccupy the space. And that can be between modern apartment buildings. It can be in where old houses are, where new structures are, and it again, people see these lots all the time, but this is an example where I think seeing them in series and seeing them one next to another makes a different kind of point and has a different kind of impact, of visual and conceptual impact that can make such spaces seem like, or mirror our vision of the natural world in relationship to the built environment much more broadly. And so it can start to characterize the sublime, and where that's my hope as an artist with that series.
Oh, go ahead, Trey. You were going to say something.
Just to comment, believe it or not, I actually looked at some of those homes and purchasing some of them.
Oh, do you?
That was when I was toying with moving to Tokyo, or
Okay.
moving to somewhere within that general province.
Right.
So looking at some of those and trying to find like what the best route was going to be, what the cost was, and then I saw the overtime cost, and I went, no, thank you.
Yes, it would be difficult. Yeah.
But
Have you spent some time in Japan?
I've actually never been.
Oh, okay.
It was going to be kind of a split decision. Just at some point, I would like to leave the United States, and that was
Why?
one of we're not going to get into that. But I think for me, just wanting to experience life differently,
Mhm.
I saw that as like a potential opportunity, and was like, well, let's navigate that, and
Sure.
let's take a look.
Yeah.
I don't even think I knew that.
There are many things I don't tell you, Emily.
Like
I
one
don't
night
believe
we'd
that's true. I don't think that's true.
one night we'd sign on to the podcast to do a live show, and you're like, "Hi, from my new house in Japan, somewhere, my empty lot in Japan."
How close to each other do you live now?
I'm in Minnesota, and he's like North Carolina.
Oh,
So
you're in okay. Yeah.
So a
Yeah.
good
Not
1,600 miles?
Yeah.
something like just a little jaunt.
Do you see each other in person much?
No, not
No,
much, but we did see each other, what, a year and a half
last
ago?
year, a
Yeah.
year and a half ago. Yeah, it's been longer than it should, but yeah,
Yeah.
we see each other every week.
Every week.
Yeah.
That's a nice thing. It's a nice thing.
It is. It makes it easier, I guess, suppose. But yeah, I feel like it's long overdue often. So
I do get fewer black eyes in this context.
What?
I'm
I'm
kidding.
falling
I'm
down on the job.
kidding. You're falling down on
Yeah,
the
I'm just
job.
kidding. We never fight.
No.
No.
There's something you brought up, Stephen, about the empty lots. You started to say something about how the impact is very different between having a single photograph of like an empty lot versus a series. And I
Yeah.
started thinking about that, and like I thought about that when I saw your Tokyo tape series. Like if you had just one of those images, it might be like, you know, it might be humorous, it might even be whimsical to a degree to see this, you know, these colorful arrows or whatever is in your that particular image. But
Mhm.
as a series, it does change everything. And so do all of your series.
Mhm.
And so I'm wondering how, like you mentioned going to this specific town where there are these empty lots, and which you must have noticed because you're already there
Yes.
or someone told you, right? So I'm wondering if that is how most of your series have started. Did you notice something and decided to run with it? Or was it like, you know, I have this thought, I'm going to go to this place and see what it looks like there?
Mostly it happens through the noticing something and being in the place for some reason or other. Sometimes it's because of, I mean, it can be for a lot of different kinds of reasons. Uh, for stuff to do with writing, doing a reading someplace, or artist residencies.
Oh,
Have
sure.
been to a bunch of different places, but you know, I've done a lot of work in Italy, and that began with, interestingly, someone uh, uh, visiting someone there where I was in London for the summer for some other kinds of work that I was doing, and in Puglia, visiting someone in Puglia, and uh, having them point out these empty houses and begin to talk to me about this uh, land reform movement, that post-war land reform movement that had left these empty houses in the agricultural fields in Basilicata in Puglia, and uh, and I was told, you know, that we could just that no one would really notice or care if we entered them, and that proved true. So
Cool.
um, it was clear, and it's in some ways, you know, taking photos of abandoned places, it can be problematic and can result or feel like a set of photographic cliches. And part of the what was necessary to bring me to this kind of setting was, again, this sense of the political and social history that was in evidence by virtue of taking these photographs, and also the ways in which it had been purposefully ignored, the ways in which the houses themselves are were evidently shameful to people in Basilicata and Puglia because this movement had failed, even though, of course, it has nothing at all to do with them and everything to do with the program and the way in which it was set up to fail.
Mhm.
And but like people who are put in those kinds of circumstances, it often results in those who are suffer the most feeling the most shame about it. And so I thought this is uh, there is an overarching political structure and ideological structure that this can demonstrate in various ways, uh, and um, and that will mitigate the ways in which the images appear to be preying on the the sense of loss or nostalgia and things like that. So, yeah. And that series itself led to a number of projects in Rome and in other parts of Italy in particular. And in this is a different kind of project where it, you know, I do some work in in squatted spaces in Italy, places where the unhoused are in abandoned buildings, say abandoned factories or hotels or office buildings, where people who Italians and undocumented migrants are find their a place to live where they are otherwise unable to afford a place to live, including a series in a tent city series which is on my website actually. So you've seen that, called Baobab, which was a tent city behind a Tiburtina station
Yeah.
that was there for a time. Yeah.
I mean, sorry, starting 4 different sentences, let me pick one. What astounds me about what you describe is how much thought is being put into a photograph. And I know earlier I asked you about what do you think prevents people from truly seeing what's already in front of them. I think it's I think what truly differs about what you're doing is you are taking so much time to consider the social, the political, I mean, potentially the economical impact of what this that you're about to take is going to do moving forward. And so, whereas we are just going, oh, cell phone, click, and then we kind of move on about our day, I am truly astounded as an artist with how much thought and care is going into each of these series that you have been describing. And it shows how much you care about the subject that you're about to go into, and also how much you've researched it and put yourself into that mindset to be able to craft the image that you are truly going after.
Yeah, thank you. That's a very nice way of putting it for me, and I think it's true that that's part of it's certainly how my practice works, and that's the sense in which I was saying before too. It's not just a visual practice. It's not just a reactive practice, and a lot of photography, even successful in the sense of aesthetically successful photography. I mean, photography I like can be really purely reactive, and um, I can see where I can see that the results of that can be thrilling, uh, but I cannot see how I could do it as a practice. For me, it doesn't draw me as a practice. How about you, Emily? In terms of your photography practice, how does it work for you in terms of how you decide what you're photographing?
Thank you for repeating the question. Boy, it comes from all over, like you. Sometimes I just notice something
Yeah.
and it's curious. Um, there was a time when I had very little resources to go travel and do some of the photography I would love to do. And uh, I decided I was sitting on the sidewalk with my cat was outside with me. And I noticed that there were these itty bitty little flowers in among the grass next to the sidewalk. And I'd never noticed them before. And I went, huh, this is 2 feet outside my front door. I should find a way to use this. And so I started maybe that way.
Hmm.
But there are other photo shoots where I've gone, okay, let's get a team together. Let's get Trey. Let's get, a model. Let's get um, someone to video the behind the scenes stuff. Let's get hair and makeup and all the things to make this big photo shoot happen. And then there are other photo shoots that happen because they were a side effect, almost accident. Like one in particular that I think of is probably my benchmark experience was we went out to photograph James, who wanted a very British looking photo of him in a very British looking suit with a very proper looking horse. And so we're going to do this English countryside kind of look. And the girl that was Danielle, who was the horse handler for our shoot that day, said, hey, do you have anything I could like throw on to just get a quick shot with this horse? And so I brought along this yellow dress. And then the yellow dress shot that I took just as like well, while we're here waiting for James, we'll like throw this yellow dress on and jump on the horse quick, turned into one of my best. Like that shot took off way more than anything else I did that day.
Hmm.
And sometimes those design, like a design change, it's like a shift change of focus. Sometimes being that agile or that flexible has been the bigger payoff. So
Yeah.
it's usually not what I plan that turns out good.
Right. I mean,
Yeah.
and I totally get that. I mean, it's sometimes there is, and the word is aleatoric, an aleatoric element to the photographic practice, right? Things happen, and
Mhm.
they are we use the word, we capture them somehow. We
Mhm.
make the random, the unexpected feel necessary by freezing it, by holding it. And I don't do that kind of shoot. Like
Right.
I don't use external light for the most part. Occasionally, but it's only I bring it, I put it up, I use it. I don't, and of course I don't photograph people, so
Right.
that's in. And so I don't end up using them in any of those ways. I will say I work with an anthropologist and archaeologist named Carolyn White, who's also my wife, and
Oh.
we do this work together quite a bit. So she writes a lot about the work, and she also in situ can help to assist with some logistics. You know, if I'm uh, bent over for a half an hour and a Tokyo subway stop, you know, she can sort of stand between me and the oncoming traffic of people until I simply she can't hold them back any further or divert them any further.
Right.
Yeah,
That's helpful.
it's
It's
very
so helpful.
it's very helpful. Or you know, because I'm trying to many people in the circumstances where I'm photographing are uh, some of those circumstances are only made available to me because I don't photograph people, because people in certain types of situations don't want to be seen, they don't want their images to be used, and but then sometimes even in those circumstances people are like, hey, there's a camera, you know, and they want to run in front of the camera, and then that, so it's nice to have someone else talk to them so that they don't.
Mhm.
I mean, you know, it's I'm happy to take someone's photograph if they ask me to, and I'll send it to them and then delete it from my own files.
Right, exactly. Of all your projects you've done, whether it be a literary work or some artwork, like photography you've done, what if your career in both of those were to end right now? I'm making this up as I go.
Okay.
Which do you which one would you want to, I guess, speak the loudest?
Oh, I don't know. That's a really difficult question for me to answer. I
Okay.
mean, you know, but it's okay. You can ask a difficult question. I think that there are different ways in which writing can the I can express more complex thoughts in writing in a
Yeah.
certain respect, and so I can imagine uh, uh, ways of reading my work, and I hope that there are ways of reading my work that are uh, are quite unexpected to me, and uh, or move the work in directions that are maybe a part of how I understand the work, but not a primary part of how I not the focus of the work, but someone else finds that focus, and that is uh, I find that extremely compelling. I like to not control the effects of the work. On that side. On the other hand, the writing is difficult. You know, it confuses people, and it's not. It is confusing. It's quite experimental, for lack of a better term, and you know, people don't like to work very hard, and uh, visual work, people think they can get it in a second. So it's not that they can, but but there's a way in which you can speak to someone quickly in a photograph or in an exhibition of, say, 15 or 20 of images from, say, a couple of different series. There are resonances that people can find in a 10-minute, walkthrough of that show, or a half-hour walkthrough of that show. But I know it will take hours and hours and hours for people to read one of my books,
Mhm.
and they don't want to give it that kind of time much of the time. I mean, less and less people want to spend time in that way. So, there are advantages and disadvantages to both forms, which is why I'm glad I do both forms.
Yeah, I would imagine like the emotions that your photography would evoke would cause people to be drawn to your written word as
Yeah,
well.
I think that's sometimes true. Although the photography also sometimes confuses people, and
Sure.
and and they don't know what, and that's good. Confusing people is good.
It's still
Um,
evoking. Hmm.
oh yeah, no, I mean it's I recently, there's an art magazine that I did an interview for recently called Fault magazine, and I don't think it's come out yet, but their final question to, people have final questions in interviews that they ask of every interviewee. I'm told,
Yes.
and
Mhm.
and theirs is, "What is your fault?"
Oh,
What is your fault? So, and you can take that any way you like. They say, so you can be quite. But I answered somewhat honestly, and just said, just the extraordinary pleasure I take in confusing people.
I enjoy that. That is I love that.
Yeah,
Like you're entertained.
it's of primary importance to me. There's not there. It's a wonderful thing. Yeah.
That is fascinating. I wish we had so much more time. I looked at the time just now and went, "No. No, we need another hour minimum." Um
Well,
I want to ask if you had someone come to you and ask you like, "How do I get started in doing what you do is fascinating. I want to change my fault from San Andreas to being the entertainment, the joy I get in confusing people."
Yeah.
If they wanna dive into the approach you have, advice would you give?
I mean, it's always, and with like, the answer is always engaging with other people's work. Uh,
Mm, mm,
that and finding ways. So, as a writer, the answer is reading work that is the kind of work that you envision yourself recapitulating in your own work. Um, I think that art practice comes from a kind of, it can be what, I'll use a term that's in other contexts, but the philosopher Paul Ricoeur calls a kind of hospitality. You are, but really, I think it's reciprocity. It's saying, this is something that is particularly meaningful to me, and think that I want it's it would be right, it would be imperative for me to recapitulate this for others in ways that it wouldn't be accessible to them, because they'll be slightly different by virtue of my doing it.
mhm,
And but part of it is that I think that any art practice, um, in this respect, is in relationship to other artists and other ways of doing, in discourse with those other artists and those other modes of expression. So, as a photographer, thinking about painting, thinking about other forms of visual work, thinking about other photographers, seeing the work of other photographers, and noticing uh, how that is impactful or not. And that's how you understand what might be possible for you to do, um, in a way that feels, uh, for lack of a better term, authentic to one's own vision. Um, but what you can't do is just say, okay, I want to write, so start writing. I don't read, I just want to write. And this is something that happens, people, or you can make photograph. It's a part of the problem with the photograph, right? Is that now everyone uses a camera.
mhm.
Um, They don't make photographs because my general notion or the way I express it is, a photograph is a thing that's printed, and if you're
Right.
not printing, you're not a photographer. You might be a content creator, but you're
Okay.
not a photographer, and that might be a fine thing to be, but you're not a photographer unless you make photographs. So unless things get printed in some way and have a life outside of a screen, and uh, that's fine. Uh, the problem with the sort of constant photography that we see that people make is that it doesn't have a relationship to other photography. It doesn't see itself echoing or speaking to the work of other photographers. So it's not really an art practice, and most people don't think of it as an art practice. They think of it as a documentary practice of their own lives, a kind of self-promotional practice, that sort of thing.
For the most part.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean,
It's
95% of the people who take photographs nowadays, which is 95% of the people in the at least in the industrialized world. So
sure. Yeah, this isn't art. This is just what I had for dinner. Yeah.
yeah, right.
Mhm.
Not and there are ways of you can, of course, there are. Uh, if you look at my teacher as a photographer as an undergraduate was Stephen Shore, who is a great photographer and one of the uh, I think one of the most important photographers of of this century and the last, and uh, and some of his photographs from the 70s are of breakfasts in diners, and uh, those are fantastic photographs
Sure.
because he knows what he's doing. He knows how to make that photograph to go to what you were saying earlier, Trey. How to make that into something that no one has ever seen before.
Yeah, exactly. Well, this does bring it to us. Before I ask my next question,
Okay.
um, I do have to ask this. Would you come back to be on the podcast?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Please?
anytime. You guys are. It's really a delight to talk to you both.
We need a part 2 at least.
Okay,
I
Please?
feel like this
anytime.
is
I would love to. Yeah,
the shortest hour ever. I say that
I
I say
appreciate it.
I'm thrilled to say that often enough, but I really feel that tonight.
Oh, that's very
We definitely need more time.
yeah. I would love to come back. Yeah.
Perfect. Yes. Then you can answer this next question twice,
Okay.
which has nothing to do with anything we've talked about so far, which
Hmm.
is if you could sit down and have lunch with anybody in the world, alive or dead, who would be sitting on the opposite side of that table?
It's an interesting what the criteria for selection are quite peculiar because one wonders who would you want to talk to, whose work do you like, that sort of thing. But at the same time, uh, uh, who would does one want a pleasant lunch companion or not? So, for instance, it might be quite interesting, as an example, to have lunch with Nietzsche or Schopenhauer,
Mhm.
and yet they would potentially be quite unruly as lunch companions. Um, I, I'm going to answer this with like 15 names, but I wouldn't mind having lunch with Marx. This would be a
Oh,
fantastic,
yeah.
and he would be, I think, far more amenable and
Less of an adventure.
yes, yes. But then I think to myself, well, this is the modern romantic, so I should say someone like Shelley
Mm.
or maybe a German, Schelling, Friedrich Schelling, something like that. Someone instrumental in giving us what was the 19th century romantic movement.
Well,
These
there's no wrong answer.
There's no wrong answer, obviously.
No.
This is a big gathering that could also be a Monty Python skit of players, apparently. So,
Thank you for bringing up that reference.
It, it does make me think of that recent SNL UK skit where they had I don't know if you've seen this, but they had clones of famous British people all gathering together to have lunch. The problem is They only exist on this planet for 1 hour, so they're having to sit down. So you have everybody from, like, Winston Churchill to Princess Di sitting at the same table together, and they're all parodies of these very famous individuals. So
Hmm.
it's starting to make me think of something akin to that, but I don't think maybe quite as humorous, probably a little more jovial in terms of the conversation.
Yes, that sounds good to me.
And only an hour. This was only an hour.
I know.
No.
Not long enough. Yeah.
Chaos. So we have our question from we do something on the show now where we take a question from our previous guest that was meant for our current guest. And our previous guest was Rachel Gelfeld, who is the stunt woman. Fascinating episode, by the way, if you want to listen to that. But her question for you is there a writer that was influential to you as a child?
Yes. When does childhood end? That's the question.
Good. I love that.
Ooh.
Never.
I mean, I had I entered into, when I was quite young. No, I would say no. Like when I was just learning to read and reading, and none of that mattered to me. None of the stuff that came. And then till about I guess I was about 12 when I encountered the first things that really shook me, I guess. Emily Dickinson, for instance, was extremely important encounter. And then, some things that are, I think the more interesting thing is the things that are influential that as an adult I don't care about, or one doesn't care about. When one has these things, so it could be children's literature, but you might still care about that.
Sure.
But of course, I had somehow I found my way into philosophical literature fairly early, and that was through sort of passing through a particular kind of I guess mystical literature of the 1970s. So like Carlos Castaneda was important to me at a time, if you know those books, which are, were very popular at the time, that broadly supposedly ethnographies of the indigenous peoples of northern Mexico, basically.
Okay.
All entirely made up, but it turns out. But it really had an impact on me and led me to some other figures that ultimately, through random footnotes and things like that, led to a more serious engagement with philosophical literature. I'm not sure if that will answer.
Excellent answer. Yes.
Your previous guest's question or not, but
Well, that's wonderful.
Yeah.
And then we also ask you
Yeah.
if you have a question for our next guest. And our next guest next Monday is Sammy Canold. She is a Broadway film and television director who is one of Forbes magazine's 30 Under 30 in Hollywood and Entertainment. She's one of Variety's 10 Broadway stars to watch, one of Town and Country's creative aristocracy, and a Drama Desk Award winner. She made her episodic directing debut on Grey's Anatomy, and she was named a Sundance Writers Intensive Follow and was selected for Dolby and Anti-Gravity Academy's short film studio. She is developing her first feature film called The Homecoming with the Sundance Institute. So she is accomplished. She is also in theater and opera, has directed some full-scale productions on Broadway at the Kennedy Center, at the Lincoln Center, and more. So, do you have a question for Sammy?
Well, sure. I mean, it's a funny thing because I just in those one. I'll give you two possible questions, and you can decide which one you want to ask.
Okay, or both. Yeah.
The first is, does it feel like an insult to be called creative aristocracy?
Oh, I love that.
Because it does to me. Who wants to be an aristocrat? That's a terrible thing to be. I mean, it's a truly unbearable to be saddled with that designation, I think. But then the second question, which is maybe related, is has any of her work resulted in art that she doesn't like?
Oh, wow.
I was thinking along those lines for a question for her, so I'm glad you asked it. I'm writing this down. Okay. I got it. We're good.
Wow. Okay.
Very nice. I can't wait to ask those.
Oh, what happened to Trey? You disappeared. Oh, there you are. You switched spots on my screen.
I don't know what's going on. It's very dizzying.
Sorry.
You were all of a sudden in North Carolina. And
Right. That portal
as far as
opened.
I'm
I don't know.
concerned, yeah.
Well, Stephen, I really do have to say again, I love your perspective. I love the direction of art, and I love, though you describe it as maybe a non-interest in things, it is such a determination and such a good focus in life. I really do appreciate your perspective, and I can't wait for part 2 so that we can talk about it, because I've got a question I'm burning to ask you, but I want to save it for next time.
Well, let's set it up soon, please.
Okay.
Okay.
I'm making a note of
Thank
that.
you so much.
Perfect. Things we want to plug about Stephen. Of course, you can go to his website, stevenseidenberg.com, to find some of his past works, find out about his photography books and his other literary works. You can find him on Instagram at steven.seidenberg. Are there any other places you like to plug?
I suppose until the end of this month, if anybody's in Nevada, northern Nevada, I have a large show of my work at the Lilly Museum in Reno.
Awesome.
So stop in there. It's open, free to the public, but beautiful space and a nice show, I think.
Great.
And at time of recording, this is in May. So if you're listening to this in May of 2026, at the end of this month, that's where Stephen will be. Please tell him that you were listening to this episode.
I won't be there at the end of the month. It's just there through the end
Just
of
the work.
Oh, just the work. Okay.
Yes, I was there. It's been up for a couple months already. But yeah, anyway.
It's
Go
all
look.
good.
Go take
Go
a look.
look.
Yeah.
But tell me, send me an email. Tell me you like the work.
Yeah.
It's always
Please.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, everybody, for tuning in. We really couldn't do the show without you. You can find past episodes at themodrom.com or wherever you get your podcast episodes. We're also on Patreon. Search for The Modrom on Patreon. Thanks so much for tuning in, everybody. Have a great evening. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.